What's up, studs and honeys? Welcome back to episode 3 of the Ardor and Good Experience, hosted by yours truly, Sean O'Malley. Today we're diving into a powerhouse episode with our remarkable guest, Ebed Jarrell. Ebed's unwavering character, unmatched passion, and distinctive philosophy has set him on a path to develop one of the fastest growing empires in the sport of wrestling. In this captivating conversation, Ebed unveils his profound insights on why wrestling stands as the ultimate character molding sport, the art of crafting an empire fueled by passion, his guiding principles in coaching the upcoming generation of top tier athletes, and much more. Without further ado, let's extend a warm welcome to the one and only Ebed Jarrell. You want to give like a brief introduction on yourself? Like tell us what you're about, what you're doing, who you are, where you've been, the whole nine?
Yeah, definitely. So, my name's Ebed. I started wrestling at the age of 11, fifth grade, maybe 10. And I started wrestling because my brothers wrestle. So, my oldest brother started wrestling. He wasn't too great at it, but he started the ball rolling for everybody else. And then my brother Steven was the first one to really get into wrestling seriously. He was a state champ in middle school, multiple time state champ in high school. So I kind of followed along his suit. I fell in love with it. I did a lot of other sports, swimming, football, but I loved wrestling. Wrestling is an amazing sport because of how complicated it can be, I think. I think the technical side of it is so interesting compared to a lot of other sports. I think other sports could be just as technical, but the variety in technique is a lot more for wrestling. For example, I swam, and I'm sure swimming is super technical. I never got to the highest level, so I can't speak to it like I can with wrestling. But, you're doing one stroke. You're doing one movement pretty much, and you're trying to master it. Like similar with sprinting. Um, Football is a little bit different, but even football, you'll have a specific role, and you'll kind of get limited to that role. The thing I love about wrestling, though, that made me fall in love with it is like you can build your own character. You can build your own moves, your own system. And think about your brother Mickey that, he has the wildest style you could think of. Like you try to teach him, hey, hit a high crotch switch to double. He's like, nah, I'm gonna go over under and throw you on your neck. You know what I mean? So, I love that about it. I also love that, I was on some team sports and it was never really up to me a lot of times. It is partially up to the person, but I love that it was an individual sport. So I fell in love with it. Slowly, I kind of stopped doing my other sports and focused solely on wrestling. I ended up winning a state title my freshman year, which was really, really big. I know Rhode Island's not the best wrestling state. It's getting better though now for sure. But that was a big win for me. And the problem is I did deal with a lot of struggle as well, right? So I won states my freshman year, the perfect story, but I go into my sophomore year, I sprained my ankle a week before and I ended up not wrestling at states. And then junior year, I tear my meniscus a couple like weeks before. I wrestle at states but don't do too well. So that sophomore junior seasons, the years where I'm supposed to be doing really well so colleges can see me, I'm nowhere to be found, right? I don't place at my Rhode Island state tournament, which is like a district tournament for New Jersey probably. And, I'm not getting called by anybody. Maybe I go, not even any divisions really. I was just like, again, if I'm not at least winning the state tournament, no one's really looking for a kid from Rhode Island at this point. And summer of my junior year going into my senior year, I meet another coach. His name's John Clark. He coaches at Sacred Heart right now. He's the head coach there. And at the moment, John Clark, he was an assistant coach at Brown University and just doing like privates on the side, like a lot of the college coaches will do. And he comes into my club, and the normal practice partner that wrestles the private, he's like, I'm not feeling it today. And this is my friend. He's like, I don't really want to do the private. Hey, Ebed, can you please do it? I'm like, yeah, 100% I'll do it. I do the private, and then like from that day on, I'm doing privates with this coach, like as the practice partner for like hundreds of privates, like 3 privates a week. He calls me up, hey, come to Cape, come drive 2 hours away. We're doing a private lesson on a private island, like random crazy stuff. We're just like whatever. I was just grinding out doing privates with this guy. I got significantly better, started beating nationally ranked guys, pinned my way through the whole entire season. Besides the state finals, I majored the kid, but I ended up really just making that next jump. And the biggest thing, if a wrestler is really listening to this, which I expect some wrestlers at least, the biggest jump was the technical side. I was aggressive, I was strong, but really getting a coach out there that knows not only the right technique, but how to communicate that to you so you can understand it. And I think the more I understood it, the better I got. And I don't mean just uh, understanding the move, but the concepts of wrestling. You know, every sport has certain concepts, positioning, um, you know, mainly positioning actually is the biggest thing, right? You getting on a shot, you getting on a leg attack. Are you in proper positioning? Is your head up? Is your back straight? You know, and the defensive guy is trying to break the positioning, bend you back over, stuff your head down, right? So I was never taught positioning wrestling. I was just taught hit the move. You know, do the setup, hit the move. I was never taught like the purpose and the reasoning behind it. And you know, given me, I actually, you know, I got a master's degree in engineering, so I had that kind of like brain as well. I'm sure some kids you could just say, hey, slap him in the face and shoot, and that kid's gonna be an animal just because like he doesn't even think when he wrestles, he just goes ham, right? But for me, I actually enjoyed learning the concepts of it to, you know, help me really understand why the purpose behind a lot of these techniques and kind of connect things together for me. So I made a big jump that year. I ended up walking on to Drexel. Obviously, you were one of my teammates, as well as your brother and some of our friends. And I redshirted that year, but I wasn't like, the thing was, I did walk on, but I wasn't like a horrible kid my freshman year. Um, the big thing was because of my injuries, no one knew who I was more like I flew under the radar a little bit. You know, I went on the team my freshman year. I placed at, you know, the collegiate open. So I wasn't like a, you know, whatever, horrible wrestler that like didn't, I didn't like walk on the team and didn't know how to like tie my shoes or whatever. That makes sense. But I wasn't the top guy. And, you know, going into my redshirt freshman year, second year, I had to earn a spot on the team, which is definitely tough. I mean, we all know how that's like, you know, doing wrestle offs or, you know, you're wrestling the guy every day in the room. And the biggest thing that actually helped me get the spot, and a little advice for people out there is, you know, not being afraid to lose the spot and not being nervous like, oh, is the coach watching? Right? Is the coach watching? Like, do I have to win this like 7 minute go 1-0? Then the coach will know that I can beat him and that I'm better than him in a match. Coaches aren't keeping track of that score. Coaches are really looking like who's putting the effort in. Obviously, if one kid's way better, it doesn't matter if that kid's going as hard as he can. If the other kid's just smoking him up, I get it. It doesn't make any sense. But in a close competitive battle for a spot on a team, you need to be super aggressive and showing the coach that, hey, when I go out on the mat, when you give me the opportunity, I'm going to put this effort out there. I'm not going to be nervous, holding back. I'm going to go out there and put a full effort on for you guys every time. And I think the coaches appreciated that about me. They knew every time I walked out, they knew I was going to wrestle exactly the way I always do. I had consistency in my wrestling. My effort was going to be all the same. Sometimes I would get scored on, sometimes lose, sometimes I win, but I would look the exact same every time I wrestled pretty much. It's the same go as hard as I possibly can. Shot me in the foot a couple times because I'd run into the person and get like double legged on my back. But that helped me earn the spot, having that aggressive mindset. And that was a big click for me. Then I went on. I placed at conferences the next year, went to nationals the following year, and then my last year, COVID hit a week before nationals, which was wild because, you know, the way it was explained, 2020, right? I think one of the worst conferences I've ever had, and I don't place at the conferences, right? And then I think my career's over. And, you know, a couple days later, the coach was like, oh, you get a wild card. So I'm like, let's go. I know I got my one last chance. I'm going to go place at nationals, right? And then a week before, it's like, okay, COVID's happening. There's going to be like half the amount of spectators. Then they're like, all right, now it's just going to be parents. Then a couple days later, it's like, all right, no spectators. And then we had that breakfast where Coach Az brought us all into the Drexel Diner and was like, all right, you guys, it's all done. Go home. So I'm like, all right, whatever. That's the way it ended. And I went home. That summer, I got married, had multiple kids, started an engineering job, quit it 2 years later. Now I run a club full time with my brothers. It's called Iron Faith. We have 2 locations right now in Rhode Island, and my goal is to make the best club in the country.
That's beast, man. Yeah. So like we can unpackage a lot of things. First thing I'm thinking of, my one buddy, Matt Rose. He's like my hometown buddy.
Yeah.
He would always harp on this one quote: "Reaction to adversity defines the man." And that was like something that stuck with me throughout my collegiate career, especially with like these young guys going into the rooms. It's coaches want to see your response to the adversity that's on the table, especially in recruiting realm. Like when I was
100%.
getting recruited, I wasn't getting recruited by like Big Ten schools or anything super sexy, but I would show up in a room and I would smack a kid right in his mug and he'd be like, all right, this kid means business.
Yeah.
And I would get my butt kicked. I would get throttled by all these elite guys, but I was at least putting myself out there and I wasn't quitting. My ability to persevere forward and react properly or hold myself accountable through that experience was kind of what attracted that realm of coaching.
Yeah.
And it's the same exact thing in like professional life. If you're going to respond to a loss by just sulking and moping around, no one wants to be surrounded with that energy.
Yeah.
So keeping that high frequency, high energy determination and constantly pursuing forward is what's going to define you. But stepping back, like you mentioned something really cool. Wrestling's a sport that you can kind of define your own character with. Like Mickey, you see Mickey going out and he's like one of the only dudes in the NCAA that's feeding overhooks. All right.
Yeah.
You were the cream cheese man. You were running around all over the place getting weird. But you also had like the filthiest single legs ever. You would club kids hard as hell. You would move them around. You would control your ties. But you were owning the entire match because you were throwing your body into shots and
Yeah.
just staying in control. So when you were going up through the sport and developing as a wrestler from youth to high school all the way into college, what was that character you were trying to define for yourself? Because I remember when I first started the sport, I thought wrestling, especially Olympic style wrestling, was like the WWE. I was like, I'm going
Yeah.
to be John Cena, Stone Cold Steve Austin. I'm going to be Ric Flair, and I'm going to be doing all this crazy stuff. First practice I show up to, I'm like, how do I hit a choke slam?
Yeah.
But I was like, that's the character that I thought I was going to bring to the sport of wrestling. But it obviously evolved through a bunch of different outlets of the people I surrounded myself with. What was your defining core for that character that you brought onto the mat?
Yeah. And mine changed definitely over time, but the I think I developed into a wrestler that was very aggressive. So, very offensive, very aggressive, and it was it happened in several stages. Like at some points in my career, I was nervous. I was like, especially when I was like first starting out in college, I was nervous when I got that varsity spot to go out there and let it fly. To go out there and shoot because I'm like, I gotta win. I gotta win. I gotta win. Right. And actually seeing what my brother was doing at the Division 3 level and some of the advice he gave me helped me continue to push to that character I really wanted to be, which was an aggressive, offensive wrestler who, you know, whether I won or lost, like you said, the coaches would be like, I respect that person. My teammates wouldn't be like disappointed in, nobody would be disappointed in me because it's like the effort was there. You know what I mean? And most of the time, like, I can't even recall really when I can't recall losing in college and people being like, wow, he like I'm disappointed like in that performance kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like I slipped up a couple times and lost, but a lot of my performances were like the effort was always there. So going back to my brother, what he told me, and he had the most takedowns in his college career in a year, which was crazy, like 275, like an insane amount of takedowns. That year he had the most techs out of any division. So super, super aggressive. And what he told me was you've got, in order to have that aggressive match, in order to be aggressive in matches, you have to be aggressive in practice and extra aggressive in practice. And as a result, I set a goal for myself during the live portions of practice to do 100 takedowns. Not get 100 takedowns, but 100 like attacks. Because you can't
Mm-hmm.
you can control 100 attacks. You just have to shoot. It's an attack. But you can't control 100 actual takedowns. So I like to set goals that you can hit. And you can't say like, oh, I couldn't hit it because of X, Y, Z. It's like, no, you should have shot 100 times. And I chose such a high number so that I could overcome, my redshirt freshman year not shooting in matches pretty much. I would hand fight super hard, but I would be like afraid to pull the trigger. And not only did getting aggressive in practice help me to become the aggressive wrestler I wanted to be, it helped me increase my learning way faster because I was in on a leg attacks like so much more than everybody else. Like like in a normal practice, I may only do like 5 to 10. Especially think about heavyweights, right? You might only attack the legs 10 times in a 30-minute go because
Yeah.
if you don't want to get stuck on bottom, right? So, and that's what it was kind of in the beginning, especially like wrestling your brother. He wants you to attack his legs. Like, please shoot a high crotch so I can sit the corner on you, right? So, but I actually started scoring on him from that position because of how many times I got there and not being afraid to get in those positions and score. So while other people may only be on the legs 10 times in a 30-minute go, I was on the legs feeling the finishes 100 times. And I was able to recover from bad shots. So I no longer got scored on defensively anymore. And then even my bottom got so much better because, yeah, I was super offensive and I did slip up a lot and I got better on bottom and better on top. So this is my advice to anybody, even if you don't want to become I think everyone should want to be somewhat aggressive. I mean, you could have a style of laid back and like people shoot in, but even if you don't want to be the aggressive wrestler, in practice you should be because it's going to help you to get better at your technique. And going back to what you were saying about, adversity, right? And that defining the person. And even you were saying like, kind of having that high energy and stuff like that. Well, that's what happens when you're super aggressive too. Like a lot of my matches, I'd be down by a lot of points. Because of my aggressiveness, I would break the person and I would come through that adversity in that one match and end up winning the match. And I think, like I said, I wanted my teammates and my coaches to know that I put a full effort out there and they may have been disappointed if I lost the match, but they knew like I came out, I was dog tired. I let everything out on the mat, and that's the kind of wrestler I wanted to be. And I feel like that's what I end up becoming. Maybe not in the beginning, but as time went on, that's what I think I became.
You could put the action out there. You could take the action. You're not always going to be able to dictate the outcome. When you start constantly persevering through that action and doing it every single day, like you said, that 100 reps of attacks every single day in the practice, it's going to compound into resulting into a better outcome. You're not going to be able to control the outcome every single time, but if you're constantly pushing yourself, putting that high effort in and improving every single day off a mile marker like that, keeping your metrics high, it's going to end up rolling over into something that's substantial. So when you were breaking all that stuff down, what were like you said that 100 attack a day metric. What are some of the metrics that you kind of like push the kids that you're working with right now to harp on in the practice room? Like you want them to be aggressive, but do you realize like, because I'm working with some high school kids now, maybe it's a tie up. Like I'm trying to break it down into the simplest sense for setting a tone for a practice so it could transfer over into a match. Some kids don't want to have an aggressive tie up. Some kids just want to play patty cake all day. How are you breaking that down for your kids?
A lot of it's verbal. A lot of it's verbal. A lot of it's like during live being like, I push kids into kids like shoot like they've staring at each other for like 3 minutes. I grab this like kid. I'm like shoot the shot. I grab the kid's hand like grab his leg. Like he's like the 10-year-old youth. I was like, what are you doing? We've
Yeah.
been wrestling live for 4 minutes. Grab the kid's leg. So some of it's like just like getting on him like that. But this is one of my little secrets too. I mean, it's something I learned. Obviously, everything is pretty much something you learn for somebody else. I feel like,
Mm-hmm.
but situational wrestling is huge. And it's not, so if you want to force the action, all right, you have kids that are not not wrestling at all. They're staring at each other. They're not being aggressive. You force the action with situational wrestling. I actually learned this idea from John Danaher, the best jiu-jitsu coach. He picks what he thinks are the most important situations in jiu-jitsu, and most of the live roles are in those situations. And the way that you do situational live is not timed goes, meaning most of the situational lives I used to do when I was younger was start with a leg in, right? One person on top, start with the leg in, ready, wrestle. And you'd wrestle for like 30 seconds, and then the coach would yell time, and then you would switch. The problem with that style is if I'm not a leg rider, right when the coach says go, I'll take my leg out and I'll just wrestle top. You know what I mean? And the person on bottom won't get the reps of defending a leg. Okay? Same thing with this. Ready? Starting a single leg. Ready? Go. What if we sprawl, break free, and we're staring at each other for 45 seconds? Well, we didn't really get a lot of reps in on that single. So in order to get a maximum amount of repetition in these positions, they switch on their own. So you say we're starting with the leg in. You have a leg in on top of me, ready, wrestle. If the leg comes out, I won. I got the leg out. And then I start on top, throw a leg in, then we go again. And within 5 minutes, you're going to get like 5 leg reversals. I'm going to get 5 leg reversals in a live scenario. And wrestling is a lot about those certain positions, winning those positional battles. Yes, there are the in-betweens. There are the hand fighting. There are some scrambles. But what positions are the most important positions in wrestling? In on a leg, you need to know how to finish a shot. So starting on a leg. Front headlock. That's a very common position. You need to get good at that. Top and bottom, of course. Maybe in the tripod position. I've been doing that a lot because I think the tripod's the best stand-up in college wrestling, or probably wrestling in general. Yeah. And start in a tripod. Learn how to kind of hand fight from there and peel and face your opponent. Leg in is not necessarily super common, but if you ever have someone with good ride you that has good legs, it's like really bad, right? It's horrible to get double boots in and have your arm ripped off. So I do start with the leg in as well, but that's how I force action. So if I'm having a kid, now the hand fighting, for your specific scenario, you're saying a kid's having trouble with hand fighting, just do hand fighting live goes. So just go hand fight. Or maybe you can even make games out of it, like if you get a double underhook, if you get like a double underhook in body lock, the other person does 10 push-ups or something like that. So then they're just like, they don't have to worry about leg attacks. They're just punching each other in the head and doing body locks. And here's how I learned how to hand fight too. This is I maybe it's similar to you, but I learned from hand fighting with my brother. So you know how like you want to fight your brother sometimes?
Yeah, of course.
Like when you're younger or whatever. Maybe not anymore. Like me, not too much anymore, but I'm still working close with them. So sometimes I guess, right? But it was like when I started doing live hand fighting goes with somebody that I had a lot of competition against, for me, my brother, I knew what hand fighting really was. It was like a fist fight. Hand fighting is like a fist fight. You do it legally, but it's like a fist fight, and you have to always. I think you have to always be on the borderline of legal or not, kind of. In some positions, I'm not being mean. And here's the thing: I'm never angry in my hand fighting. It's always a focused. I have a blank stare. I'm just going and doing the technique. I'm not. This isn't aggression. Is not anger. You know, I'm not out there like I want to hurt the kid. That will mess with you too. It's focused. It's doing the technique as hard as I possibly can, right? And when I said earlier, I don't, want to give anybody the wrong opinion, but be on the borderline of illegal, meaning hit the guy as hard as you can, move the guy around as hard as you can, without doing it illegally, right? So when you club, you can't bring your arm back to club, okay? Bring it from your hip and hit him with the club as hard as you can. They have headgear on. It's not a big deal. You can't, illegally slam somebody, right? You have to control them. But if you have a double, you're going to run them down off the mat. Even the pushes on the side of the mat. Like a lot of people, some people have negativity against like the, shoving the kid off the mat, stuff like that. You're thinking of it the wrong way. I'm not thinking of it like I'm trying to hurt the kid off the mat. These are all mental battles I'm trying to win in my match. If I'm shooting the kid off the mat, I'll shoot him off the mat and push him right off the mat. Not a big deal. And then run back to the center. But I'm not thinking like the second I start thinking I hate this kid, I'm pissed off, then I start my technique will start falling and I'll start getting caught in bad technique and start losing. Or I'll shoot when it's really not there because I'm just super aggressive and I'll just gas out. So that's kind of a little side note. So like if you want to force aggression, it's the two things. Yell at them, right? Give them, and it's encouragement stuff, right? It's like, let's go, get after it.
Yeah.
You doing live situations in very common positions will force the action. So if they're just staring at each other for a long time, hey, let's start doing some situation. You have to start in the leg and you have to work on scoring there. So, and then I think live hand fighting goes is a great way to increase the aggression as well. And I've told them these type of stories too. I think storytelling and stuff like that to the kids, some of them will resonate with that. Maybe some kid will remember the story where I said, hey, like I set a goal for 100 takedowns or 100 leg attacks in my practice and it helped me get better. And then they're like, all right, I'm going to set that goal for myself. So those are kind of the ways I try to speak to my athletes and help them to become the athlete I think I want them to be.
Well, dishing the pain and embracing it at the same time really kicks up vitality, man.
Yeah.
That was like my tone setter right there. I would always smile check myself, but like I would go on the mat, just club a kid as hard as I could off the whistle. It sets the tone. It sets the pace for what's going to be moving forward.
Yeah.
And then from there, I'm not trying, like, obviously you're dishing the pain. You also got to embrace it. This kid's going to come back with a club or an attack or something.
Yeah.
So you got to embrace whatever's coming forward to you. And I would try to like get in my own head because I'm an amped up dude. And I would just smile check myself because once you start smiling, you kind of take it a little less serious.
Yeah.
And then like I'll be all tight and then all of a sudden I'll smile and I'll loosen up and start getting back to my technique.
Yeah.
But no, that's awesome though. So how are you preaching mental toughness to these kids? How are you trying to build them to push that mental barrier with themselves? Because some of these kids, they'll come into the sport and they, like we talked about earlier, it's kind of like a patty cake match. They think it's like a WWE, like I thought it was, or they want to just do it for like social event or be friends or whatever it is. How are you actually going out them and creating intrinsic motivation for them or like intrinsic desire for them to be better, and then also bring a tenacity or a sense of mental toughness that's going to just, all right, we're going to bring it on the mat. We're here to like achieve something. We're setting a standard. We're living through an intention, and all of a sudden we're going to acquire these expectations, like going out on the mat for the first time, controlling the hand fight, going for attacks, all that fun jazz.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, I keep learning, obviously. I'm still a young coach. I used to, when I started my club, I was a little bit like, on the fence about, do I get these kids to be, hey, is our club going to be everyone's trying to be a national champ? Is that the best for a business? Because I'm trying to do this for a living. So it was part of like, oh, or am I going to make more of like a, hey, everyone, and more inclusive, kind of like, if you just want to do it for fun, you can also come and stuff like that. And I don't know if I'm explaining it the right way, but essentially like, is this going to be an elite club or is this going to be a local like town club, or is it going to be a combination of both? And I think in the beginning I was kind of split between, and now I'm leaning towards, I would say, more elite. And one thing is, that's what I like to do. I like to coach kids that want to get good. I also think the values of wrestling that we love, hard work, fighting through adversity, learning how to improve, all these things that, why wrestlers I feel are so successful later on in life, are not from doing like it as a little hobby 1 month out of the year for fun. You've built those skills from trying to achieve something great in wrestling. So if I want to provide the best service for my athletes and I want them to achieve amazing things in their life, I need to push them so they can learn those skills that I learned. So I think going light on these kids and making it all fun and games is not doing the best service for them. They may walk off the mat with a smile, but I'm trying to build their characters. When they're super young, 6 and 7 year old program is more games. As they get older, a little less games. As they get older, I'm pushing them harder and harder and harder. I want them to fall in love with the sport, but I want them to build those amazing traits that we've built through hard work, through setting goals, through accomplishing big goals. That's another thing too. Like, I want them setting big goals. So that will break these barriers in their mind. When they first start off, their goal might be to be JV or be varsity or whatever, or win a match. And I want them, by the time they leave, for their goal to be something way more than they ever thought, to actually win the state title. And I want them to believe that. So essentially, my thought process changed to, hey, we're going to push these kids harder. We're going to want the best out of these kids. And when these kids are, feeling discouraged and wanting to give up, we're going to encourage them through it. So I'm not going to be like, when a kid's feeling bad about losing a match, it's not like oh, suck it up kind of thing. I'm going to still do a good job of encouraging the kid through it and be a good coach on that aspect. But I'm pushing the kid to be the best. I'm going to be honest with them too. So that's kind of how my thought process changed a little bit. And I also, the nice thing we did now at our club is we split up all of the age groups, so I can make the practices a little more specific. I have a 6 and 7 year old group, an 8 to 11 year old group, 11 to 14, 14 to 18. So I have it all split up now, and I can really make these classes a little more specific and make sure that they're getting the attention they need. I think a lot of it is just them, especially with our club being new. They have to break these beliefs that they're setting goals too low right now, if that makes sense. They're setting like goals of like, maybe placing at states, and I know they can do a lot better than that. I know they can win a state title. I know they can go place at nationals, and for right now, that's the thing I'm trying to work through. How can I get these athletes to believe themselves? And the tough thing is, realistically, it doesn't happen unless you start actually winning, I think. It's kind of tough. Like, how you wanted to be an All-American?
Of course.
Of course, right? I did as well. National champ, all that stuff, right? It's tough. I'm guessing from experience from me, it's tough to have that battle of, can I really do it? And a lot of times it actually takes you beating a nationally ranked kid, getting close to like, oh, I had a one. Those type of things I think need to happen to get real confidence. So a lot of times I'm just waiting for that match, for that kid to have that 1-2 match against a nationally ranked kid. And it's like, you see this kid? Or one kid to win nationals, and then everybody else in the room is still close with him. So it's like, hey, listen, your practice partner over there, he did it, and you're close with him. Let's do it. Let's all do it as well. So I'm excited to kind of see these kids progress and start hitting some bigger goals that they've set for themselves.
Well, those are defining moments, especially going through like a collegiate career. Like you said, you knock off a nationally ranked guy or have a 1-point match, or even just don't get teched by the number one kid in the country. Like,
yeah.
Those are defining moments. You see like, oh, this kid just ran through a whole tournament. He wasn't able to bonus point me, and I was able to get a takedown on him. You're like, wow, I'm able to keep up with that. I remember my freshman year in college, I was a PUD 285 pounder, but in the conference tournament, I remember I took down like this kid from Hofstra who was like top 15 in the country. And I was like, damn, I didn't think I could take down a top 15 kid in the country. And then once I started compounding on everything, I got a little fire under my ass. So I was like, all right, this is the standard I got to live through.
Yeah.
But the one cool thing that you're kind of harping on is like, it doesn't seem like although you said goals, I don't think you're harping on goals. Because like how I kind of perceive things is I just take goals off the table. I think goals are a projection of a fantasy. I break it down into a simple 5-step system. So you have your expectations that you want to live through. All right. Like, what do you expect yourself to do? You have a standard that you need to uphold for yourself. You have an intention or a purpose that is going to carry that standard and expectation. And then from there, you come up with a system around it. And that system is going to lead to a specific outcome. Let's say that outcome is a state tournament. Let's say that outcome is a state champ or a national champ or whatever it is. As long as you're able to harp on those 4 processes right before there, you're going to be able to strive higher for that specific outcome. And at the end, you're expecting the outcome to happen. Because I'm harping on all of these things, my mentality is so freaking dialed in and so straight on all these things. I know this is going to happen. And that just reassures your confidence and your belief in yourself. And that's, I feel, the biggest thing with these little kids or these younger guys is just harping on that belief. You see some of these younger guys compete, and you could like tell midway through their match, like, all right, their belief in themselves not there. We see the talent in the room. We see these kids' capabilities, but they're not willing to persevere forward because they're not fully connected with who they are and their potential.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to have a goal like national champion, but what's the expectation at the end of the day? Is it the expectation's sometimes different than the actual goal?
Yeah.
Right? The outcome is also a lot different than the actual goal. Maybe like it was to be a national champ. Let's say it's a Penn State kid. Let's say it's like a national champ, but what if their expectations to Tech in the national finals?
Yeah.
That's a different expectation than our version of a national champ. So
yeah.
I read this though. I've been reading the articles that you've been posting on like LinkedIn and your social media and your newsletter and stuff like that. And the one thing that I really liked was you talked about, instead of focusing on like learning from your wins, you focus on high effort, high improvement. You talked a little bit about that before. How are you like ingraining that philosophy in these kids' heads? Obviously in the practice room, you want them to be aggressive, put themselves out there, set those metrics up for themselves. They're going for those attacks. But how are you allowing them or helping them find those improvements or like self-critiquing themselves so they could actually advance through the sport faster?
Yeah. And this is kind of where I push. I think what we try to do with our club is we try to figure out all aspects that we think these kids need work on to do well. So we have technique, we have mindset, we have strength, we have nutrition, and we give them help on all those areas. We give nutrition information, we give them weightlifting, regimens, we have technique videos. So we have first of all, we have the resources for them to make the improvements. Now, how do they self-reflect, like you said? Or how do we help them to realize that that's what they need to do? Video review has been big this year. So I've been saying, like, send me your videos. I get a lot of these kids' videos. I screen record myself going, hey, look at this shot. This is a great shot. Do it more. Hey, you're having an issue with here. Do it more. Also, during the practices, I always say, like, you guys need to take control of your own technique, of your own, of getting better yourself. You need to, and this is like, as a coach, I realize it more now. It's the athlete's job to come to the coach and ask for help. Hey, I'm struggling in these positions. I'm struggling here. Hey, I need help with cutting weight. I have the resources, but I don't know what they need. I don't know what each person needs. I will if I watch a match, obviously. Hey, obviously I give feedback with that. Or I see or I wrestle them and I'm like, dude, you're weak. I know you need help with that. You get some protein shakes in. But there's a balance. Well, I'm going to do my best effort to try to read and figure out what the kid needs. Of course, I'm texting the kid, hey, what do you need help on? I'm trying my best. But I need from the athlete as well to be self-reflecting, like you said, and asking me what they need help with, showing me where they had issues with, showing where they need help, maybe with cutting weight, maybe with strength training, maybe with getting to sleep, whatever the scenario might be. So I have like a conversation like I'm having right now in front of the whole group like that to help them to realize. So I'm like, hey, you guys, just remind them again, like, listen, this is your wrestling at the end of the day. You guys control yourself. I'm here. I've got the resources. I can help you in any way you need it. I can stay after. I can send you videos. I can send you articles on specific things. But at the end of the day, I need you guys to let me know. So that's kind of, I think having like these repetitive talks, hopefully kind of get through to the kids. And I think a lot of times I've got to figure out for myself what are the most important things that Iron Faith needs to focus on to like reiterate to these kids, because there's certain things that you want these kids to there's so many things you want the kids to learn, right? Like be aggressive. I want them to be aggressive. I want them to reflect on their own technique. I want them to do extra, I want them to have their nutrition dialed in. I want them to not care about winning or losing. And a lot of it is you just got to keep talking. You got to keep telling them, these kids, those topics. Like you got to tell them those beliefs again and again. And a lot of times it's one-on-one conversations. Recently I had a one-on-one conversation with one of my wrestlers who was saying, my goal is to place at states. And this is another thing connected to the goals. So he's like, my goal is to place top 3 at states. And I said, all right, well, the top 3 kids in the state are probably going to have a chance at winning New England's as well. And they have a chance at maybe even winning nationals. So why are you setting something so low? Like, why is your goal top 3 in the state when it could be just as hard to place at nationals? Like, I'm sure you have kids in New Jersey, maybe not even place or take like 6 and go and win Virginia Beach. I've probably seen that before. So I'm essentially like, because you're right, like the goals are kind of it's a weird thing to think about, setting the goals. But the one thing you did say is they need to do the work. And what I said to the kid was, if your goal was, instead of being top 3 in the states, it was to win a national title, would you train differently? And I think for then, that kid was like, oh, of course I would. If my goal is to win nationals this year, I'm going to train a lot differently than if my goal was to win or place at states. And that clicked for him. So having those one-on-one conversations, I'm sure you've had one-on-one conversation with coaches or another teammate that made things click for you. So some of it's group stuff. I think a lot of the one-on-one talks make bigger differences, but it's hard to talk to everybody, obviously, especially if I want like, I don't know, 100,000 members, you know what I mean, across the country. So I'm sure at some point it won't be me talking to all of them.
No, but you're setting the standard, man. The one thing that's really important is for these kids to define their own excellence. Benchmarking against the best or benchmarking against a standard that they think is cool, because a lot of these kids, especially in this younger generation, see like these clout chasers. Oh, it's just another Instagram pic. Oh, it's just another thing I could showcase for myself. But it's like, what's the excellence that you want to define through that showcase? So when you're going out and like, you probably felt the same way, but it was like when I was my last year of wrestling, came back, had that COVID year, and I had one side of my body. I had a torn shoulder, torn knee, torn ankle. I had 2 herniated discs in my neck. I had covered in slings and bandages all on the left side of my body. My standard of excellence was to finish a full college season of wrestling. I was at college 6 years, and I didn't finish one full season because of injuries. You were there. Yeah. So it was like my standard of excellence was to wrestle every single match and perform, show up, and be a winner, whether I won or lost, be a winner in my own sense, but show up and be there, put my max effort in and improve every single day. And that was the most fulfilling. Like, although I didn't achieve All-American status, although I didn't make nationals my last year, I beat nationally ranked guys. I beat some top competitors with one side of my body, but I wasn't benchmarking myself against anybody. Taking these kids' heads away from, oh, this is what another person's doing, this is what I should be doing, or like, this is what I want to do. It's like, redefine the own standard for yourself. What is Ebed Jarrell's sense of excellence? What is Sean O'Malley's sense of excellence? They're completely different. We may both be trying to achieve that national champ status when we were in college, but we're both on different spectrums. Your sense of hard work was different than my sense of hard work. But we both had that one speed mentality. And that's like the greatest thing about wrestling, is the focus that comes along with it.
Yeah.
So what are we've been harping on principles, which I love. You talked about like the aggressive outlook on practice and aggressive outlook on matches. We talked about the metrics of performance and all that stuff. Like, transferring it over into your entrepreneurial realm, what are your performance standards that you want to live up to with building out this empire Iron Faith? Because you're bringing in these absolute studs. You're killing it in the Rhode Island scene and the New England scene for wrestling. How are you going to keep projecting out that standard for your business?
Yeah. So like I said, what I want for myself at this point, it may change as time goes on, but I want Iron Faith and myself to be known as, or just say, we'll say Iron Faith. I want Iron Faith to, when people think about wrestling, that's where you go. And what I am doing is trying to give away as much information as possible for free so that people trust the brand. They've learned from, Iron Faith. They've watched out my hour-long instructionals on YouTube, and they've read my articles that I've written, and pretty much when people think about wrestling, they're like, this is the guy to go to. This is the, you want to look at online instructionals? Oh, well, Iron Faith Wrestling has 40 hours of every single position you could possibly think of for free on YouTube. And that is something I learned from. So one of the biggest people I follow for business is Alex Ramosi, because he's a gym owner, similar to what I do. There are some differences, I think, between wrestling and gym. But so that's one of the things that he did. The more you can give without asking, the bigger your, like, people trust you more or whatever. The brand grows more. The more people feel like almost they want to give you something. You've given me so much, like I want to give you something back. And he said that's the fastest way to grow. The fastest way to grow is to give without asking for anything in return. So that's what I'm trying to do, because my main thing is actually the main part that I do for the business is marketing. So I do all the social media, I do all the email and all the stuff like that. So I'm trying to build this brand, which essentially is like giving and not asking and not wanting anything back. And then essentially when enough people are like, please, I want to buy something from you, if we have a product that I think is good enough, we'll give it to them. But, for now, our main product we do focus on is just the memberships. Our main product is getting a kid coming into our club and getting them better at wrestling. And that's our main focus. And like I said, we try to hit on every category: mindset, nutrition, strength, technique. The technique in the wrestling is our biggest thing, of course. But, how can we get a kid to come in? Imagine your 10-year-old comes in, wrestles 3 to 4 times a week, does lifting on the opposite days, eats right, and does mindset training. Kid's going to be unstoppable. So it's my job to figure out, how can I get this kid to do that? So how can I get my incentives lined up for these kids? How can I get them to show up for every class? Maybe it's the belt system that we made. Like, hey, you got to visit, you got to come here. Part of getting your next belt is you got to make sure you show up. Right now, what we're doing for the weightlifting is, so they fill out their weightlifting sheet, they put it in a bucket. At the end of every month, I pull one out and I give one of the kids like free merch. So these little kids, I'm trying to get them to get yoked out of their mind, and I'm trying to incentivize them to do that. And same thing with, we got to figure out even better ways. So my goal is for all these kids to come into the club and to be wrestling 3 times a week, doing strength training, eating right, getting their mindset down, watching technique videos that already are part of my system. These kids will be insanely good if they can do that. So if I can set up the right incentives and encourage them the right way and get them to buy in, I think it's going to be game over. I don't think anybody will be able to hang, but
Well, it's investment in your community. I feel like that's the biggest way to build an empire.
Yeah.
Is the value adds that we could say it free or it's just giving, but
Yeah.
your biggest value add as an empire or as any organization you're trying to build out is what you're able to provide the client.
Yeah.
And it's an investment at the end of the day. You're pouring these resources into extensions of you that you could just give them. And if
Yeah.
they're able to utilize that for themselves and figure out on their own, they are going to jump levels super duper quick.
Yeah.
You're making it so easy that they can't say no.
Yeah. One thing I was thinking too was, like I said, we have camps, right? So if people want to go to camps, they can go camps. We don't really have a product across the country necessarily. So anytime I make a video, anytime I write an email, knowing that I may never have something for everybody across the country, there needs to be a purpose behind it. And it's exactly what you said, my local community. So when I write that email, is this email going to help my current wrestlers? Is this technique video going to help my current wrestlers? And if I know that, it's worth doing it because now I have a member that loves underhooks and I got an hour-long instructional I can just throw to him. Now I got a member who's having trouble with cutting weight. Well, I wrote an article on that 4 weeks ago that all my coaches know about and can send to that kid. So getting them that information on their tip of their fingers. So that is exactly what you said. It's like sometimes I get so focused in like, oh, making this like big online presence, but at the end of the day, it really is getting the best value I can do is getting my athletes at Iron Faith better at wrestling. That's what they're here for.
That's the biggest investment you have. It's not always about like the cool shit and the flair and whatever accoutrement on top, the cherry that's sticking out there.
Yeah.
It's all about like then like we said, the investment, what you're pouring into them. Because I got this coaching company, and what I do is I pour a lot of time investment into these athletes' perspective, their mindset, what they want to project themselves out towards, and that's a religious conversation. It's a daily conversation because motivation wades. All right. The big thing that doesn't is your habits for accountability. All right. And if you're able to lock down a habit for accountability and make it so easy that a person can't say no to being accountable, you're going to have a killer on your hands. Like you're going to have a kid who's going to jump levels, like just absolutely skyrocket, no matter the profession. They could be a professional athlete or not. The professionals tend to have like their own structured out system, which is awesome. But it's harping on the little things, like the little mindset adjustments. Maybe it's just second guessing an opportunity. Everyone second guesses something at a point. It's just clarifying that second guessing. The one thing I've been harping on with a lot of the guys I work with is living through absolutes. Is like defining, like, first off, you have to define anything before you project outwards. But we like define the whole structure out, and then we live through these absolutes that they define for themselves. And the cool ones that some of these guys have been coming up with is they want to absolutely dominate. All right. So, and obviously there's different variations of absolutely dominating. Sometimes it's just a workout. Sometimes it's their run, or sometimes it's a match. Sometimes it's just doing homework. But the one thing that's been circulating a lot is living through absolute faith. Is like completely embodying the projection and the purpose of their higher existence. It's not just living for themselves. Like I just recently started reading the Bible over the past like 6 months, chipping away at it one sense at a time. But the one thing that stuck with me was Romans 8, and they talk about like living through the soul, because the soul is the projection for peace and love and unconditional love and enlightenment, and then your flesh is a container for that soul, that energy that's encapsulated in you. So it's like projecting that energy that's in you out to a world that's higher than you, like a God or something greater, and living through that higher projection is what's going to allow you to persevere forward. You want to like, because you were a big marker for me getting introduced to this stuff when I was in college. Although we didn't like talk a bunch about it, but we had those sessions at Sophia's. You want to kind of like touch on like how you kind of incorporated faith into your own systems when you were competing, and how it's literally on the name of your guys' business, Iron Faith, how you incorporated faith or a higher projection of self into your business model.
Yeah. And I think like for me, it's when I'm younger, it's not, when I was younger, it's not as hard to be motivated without faith. Like if my brother says, "Hey, I want you to win a state title or something. I want you to go get the best wrestler ever." I don't necessarily I didn't necessarily need the faith. But as I started getting older and my brain started developing, and I'm like, well, why am I really even doing this? And I think you need a purpose in your life. You 100% need a purpose in your life. You know what I mean? If you don't have a purpose behind what you're doing, then it's very tough to motivate yourself to do it. Like if it logically doesn't make sense, or you can't connect the dots of why am I wrestling? Why am I putting a full effort into these things? Why am I doing what I'm doing? And for me, I'm a Christian, right? And my purpose was representing who God wants me to be in front of everybody, so that when people saw my life, they would look and go, like, what's going on with this guy? What does he have? Why is he maybe more calm, or, whatever the reason might be? I'm trying to essentially project, or trying to be as good of a Christian as I can, so that other people around me can see that and it can draw them to Christ. Essentially was was my purpose. So with wrestling, I'm like, okay, one, I love it. I love wrestling, and there's like obviously worldly purposes behind things, right? Getting a scholarship, or whatever. It's part of my college, trying to go um, get a degree and all that stuff. But my purpose is like, listen, this is my community right now. My teammates are my community. I'm here for them, and I need to represent Christ to this community right here, to my friends, my teammates at Drexel. And part of that, so in order to represent Christ well, I have to do the I have to represent myself well and do certain things, right? I have to work hard. I have to not complain. I have to not argue. I have to, try not to be a hypocrite. Obviously, I'm going to fail on a lot of things, but I got to try not to, if I'm saying something, I got to keep my word. Right? I got to be there. I got to be kind. I got to be there for my teammates if they need me. So my bigger purpose at the end of the day is, I'm grateful to God for saving my life from eternal hell, essentially. And I am, as a result, trying to live my life for Him and help all these people around me know Him. And I know how much God's helped me with a lot of the things I've dealt with, reading the Bible, going to church, stuff like that. I know He's helped me with my anger, with even my purpose in general. With, like I said, when you don't have a purpose, you feel lost. You're like, why am I doing these things in the first place? Why am I, why does it even matter if I make money or am successful or whatever, right? I think some people may not need it. I think most people do, though. So that's kind of my personal thing with that. So I was, running Bible studies throughout college, and I wanted to help my teammates in any way I can. I know some people, if they needed it, I wanted to be there for them, help them, give them any advice I think I knew, and guide them in the right direction. And then as far as coaching now, like you said, our name is Iron Faith, and part of it is just so people know, like, listen, this is what we believe in. But the other side of it is, hey, we're not out here saying you have to be a Christian to wrestle with us or something like that. You know what I mean? Our our point is just like, this is what we believe. We want people to know that. Just like when I was at Drexel, you kind of probably knew the same thing, right? I'm not running around like smacking people upside the head with the Bible or something like that. After I take somebody down and whack them with the Bible in the head or something. But I want people to know the type of person I am, and it also helps me to stay accountable. If I'm rocking Iron Faith, and I it's another incentive to keep myself to a high standard. If this is what the business is too. It's like, how do I treat my customers? You know what I mean? Like, if Iron Faith has a bad reputation, that's not good in multiple ways. Not just for the business, but because of my beliefs, the owner's beliefs. It's also, not a good representation of Christ, I would say. So that's kind of with that. And we do push a hard belief on the kids. Like, you got to believe in yourself. Again, we're not necessarily pushing Christianity or anything like that, but we want these kids to believe in themselves, because you have a lot of kids that come in that are just like, they've never believed they can do anything. They don't even know, like, most times they can't even like fathom what having a big goal, like a big dream. Like, they can't even picture like outside of their local elementary school, especially if they're young. They're like, what do you mean? Like, I've just been playing like local sports, and I only have like 5 friends I even know. What do you mean I could do something big with my life? So I think pushing these kids with the belief and the faith that they can do amazing things is big. And I think at the end of the day, like having a purpose behind what you do, and the stronger the purpose is, the more you can pull from that too. So if you're in a hard workout, even if it's simple as like the goals and stuff like that, the more you have a reasoning behind what you're doing, the more you can pull from it when you need it. When you're going through a hard workout, when you're going through a tough time, with your personal life, you can reflect on, why am I doing this? And if it's a weak purpose, or if it's no purpose at all, it might be tough to withstand that. You might just give up. So I think having a purpose can keep you grounded through adversity and keep you focused on a good direction in your life.
No, definitely having faith in your own capabilities and projecting outwards those bigger dreams. When I was growing up, I used to think of it in this context. Like anytime I would be exposed to a new realm of opportunity and I needed to really break down a new wall for myself, I like encapsulate it into the sense of I'm just covered in bubbles. Like I have a bubble around me for every single step, and I need to pop that bubble in order to get to the next step. Wrestling in like little local tournaments. All right. And then I want to step out into like the next county. That's a bubble I need to pop. Now I got to step it out to the whole state. That's a bubble I need to pop. Now I'm stepping it out to the metropolitan region. That's a bubble I'm popping. And I was just like breaking it out until I'm popping massive bubbles and they're all over me. And I just need to keep expanding my area that I own. The one cool thing that I've been working on with a couple of the guys is, especially like keeping on the thread of faith, is we talk about identity recognition. And athletes, I think, have a good sense of it, but not many of them define it for themselves. The simple question of who are you? When we're younger, we really don't have the answer to that question. We think who we are is just our name. But your identity is pretty much the conglomeration of your belief systems, like what you live through on a daily basis. Whether it's through Christ or whether it's through Iron Faith Wrestling, that's your identity. So what I've been helping guys do that I work with is like define or redefine that identity and recognize the opportunities surrounded through that identity. And then if you want to think of it in like, a Venn diagram, two circles and they intersect, and there's that
Yeah.
little almond shape in the middle. How I break it down, I try to keep it as simple as possible. You have your identity on one side, and you have your character or your highest projection of self on the other. All right. And when the two circles start to converge together, think about this. I have my favorite quote of all time is a question. What happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object? All right. Everyone has their own answer.
Yeah.
But that's what the unstoppable force and immovable object are. You have this unstoppable force of your identity that's constantly compounding on itself and redefining itself. And then you have this end state of your character, and they're converging in on each other. And there's an intersecting point. And that intersecting point is defined by, in my opinion, the aura that's radiating through you. All right, your faith, your purpose. What's the reason for you being here? Your plan, your systems. And what I broke it out was, especially when I started harping on the Bible, was I broke it down into the system called the aura model. It's OARA. It's all dependent upon your outlook, your acceptance, your recognition, and your action. Every time you like when in a college example, you wake up, you have a super hard workout, you don't sleep, you don't get a good night's sleep, you have a terrible nutrition, whatever it is. All right, when you wake up that next day, you have the option to choose your outlook. Am I going to get better today? Or am I going to sulk? Am I going to be negative? And the next thing was acceptance. You have to accept the things you can't change. I feel like crap. I didn't eat good. I have terrible sleep. But my outlook is I want to get better. So I need to accept all three of those things in order to maintain a positive drive for that day to get better. Next thing is recognize the opportunities that are ahead of you. 9 a.m. I have practice. Woke up at 8 o'clock. Feel like crap. Look like crap. Didn't get a good night's sleep in. I have an outlook to get better. What can I do? I could show up to practice. Now what happens? Last step is action. All right, you take action. You go to practice and you bust your balls. You do that max effort. Put it all out there. So that system was converging or allowing me and some of the guys I was working with to converge onto that character that they really wanted to live through. Especially these younger, like the young kids, they were picking up on this model pretty good. It was like, okay, like, because I kind of broke it out simple. It's like, okay, like I just need to feel good. Like kids aren't really thinking about the sense of their feeling. They're like, I'm happy, I'm sad. It's a volatile mood swings. If you could just say like, you feel good, and he's like, yeah, he's ready to do something. accepting. All right, what's on the table today? I got practice, I got school, I got whatever. All right, what's the alcohol? Like, what can you recognize about that? I could get smarter today. It's like a learning opportunity. Now, what's the action? You go to school and you learn, or you go to
Yeah.
practice and you learn, you get better. So, dude, your systems, the way you set your standard through your program, the way you're living your life is freaking awesome. You guys, you have a great model of how you represent yourself. How are you branching off, and like what's next for you after this? Like, you're constantly building out Iron Faith. You got this incredible program on the table. You're expanding your empire. What are those big projections for yourself that are higher than you, that are higher than Iron Faith, that you're looking to branch out to?
Yeah, I mean, as far as like what my goal is and what the company's goal is or what we're trying to do, I want to impact 1 million athletes. That's my goal. That's kind of what my vision is. My vision is whether it's having clubs everywhere throughout the country and helping kids in that way, or whether it's, them seeing a video or reading an article. I want to just impact as many kids as I can as possible. And we did have a vision of maybe having like 100 clubs throughout the country, but we don't necessarily know if that's the direction we're going to go in anymore. Right now, we have our 2 clubs, we have our online stuff, and the focus right now is getting our members better at wrestling and growing these 2 locations. Because one thing we realized is the most important position, at least what we think right now, the most important position in a wrestling club is the head coach. For gyms, it's not the trainer. It's the manager of the gym. It's the most important position. So it's a little different. So essentially, the model of we need 100 different, if we want 100 different locations or whatever, we need a really good coach at each one. And I think we haven't really figured out how to run a gym without me running the gym, without my brother running the other one. We haven't figured out how to, like, say you want to open a club, Sean. We haven't figured out how to get that, how to help you do that and make sure you're doing the right things and make sure, pretty much we have not learned the skill of managing very well yet. All right, that's a skill we have not picked up, and we're working on it, but like that's a skill we'll need to do if we want to grow in that aspect. Right? If we want to have other clubs where we're personally not running, we need to be able to pick the right person and manage them well and lead them well or whatever, so that they're pushing our brand. Because it's very easy for me to push my own brand, like to uphold my own standards for my thing I'm running myself. It's very hard for me to make sure somebody across the country is doing it for me. So that's why, like, our first thing of getting 100 clubs throughout the country, I don't know where we are with that. So right now our focus on these 2 clubs, get them as good as possible, keep building our online presence and being known as essentially the place to learn wrestling. And then it could go many different ways. It could go to online training. It could just be like we run camps all year round at some location that does, overnight stuff like Perler Wrestling or something like that. Or it could be we essentially, like, we have the 100 clubs, and the way we would do it is like, say you're from Penn State, you just won a national title, and Rutgers is like, we want you as an assistant coach, and then I call you up and say, hey, I want you to run a Iron Faith club at this location, and the guy's like, oh, I'd way rather run an Iron Faith club. And that's kind of like I think the vision where it would probably be. We need to get to a big enough and a respectable enough brand or name that, like, that Jason Nolf doesn't want to, like, when he's done competing, he doesn't want to coach at another Division I college. He wants to go run a club, and he loves our brand. He loves what we're doing, and he maybe doesn't want to do all the admin stuff and doesn't whether when I run ads or whatever this the other background stuff is, and we're like, hey, listen, you're the guy. We want you here. So I actually think that is kind of where we want to go with it. But we'll see. I'm excited to see kind of how this next year goes. The biggest thing I'm doing right now is I'm trying to build my online kind of brand. I've been pushing that pretty hard, and I'm pushing hard with our YouTube channel. So I'm putting out like some crazy good instructionals, like hour long on specific stuff, and that's what I'm kind of excited about as far as that. But again, there's no like specific like return right now. It's just like put it out there, but still make sure I don't lose sight of the main focus is getting our members better at wrestling. Because sometimes that does, like, at the end of the day, like, this podcast is awesome, but you don't lose focus that your customers, like you were saying, those are the guys you got to help first, and you're hoping this podcast can do something bigger for you later down the road as well. But like, I feel like sometimes I get caught up in like so much in the marketing side of things that I like, am I giving my wrestlers enough attention? And I think I am, but I need to make sure I check myself on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, you're living through abundance, man. You're maximizing every area that you're working with right now.
100%.
You got the club, you got the marketing, you got the family. And you're
Oh,
killing
yeah.
it on all across all boards, man. You're present. Yeah, that's sweet, dude. All right, so we're gonna wrap this thing up. You want to give any wise words of advice for anybody who wants to reach out to you? Anything that for those young generation of wrestlers, or just any practical business advice?
Yeah, 100%. I think I'm putting out as much information I can to you guys. I want you guys to get better at wrestling. And if you go follow up Iron Faith Wrestling on YouTube, or you follow me personally, I'll make sure you get that information. You can DM me anytime. I will answer. I will review your wrestling matches. I don't care. I'm here to help in any way I can. And I want you guys to succeed, because my goal is to help 1 million athletes. And if you're one of the million, then reach out to me.
You're a beast, dude.